Outer Wilds is a space exploration and archaeology game with a mystery to solve. I really can't tell you too much more without spoiling some fun discoveries. Spoilers will ruin the game experience, as every challenge is knowledge-based. Instead of finding items that let you reach new areas, you learn gameplay mechanics that have always been available, and that lets you reach the new areas. So please don't watch this video if you haven't played Outer Wilds, because I really don't want to ruin it for you. Alright, if you're still here, you have hopefully played the game already, or really know that you're never going to play it, so let's start with my playthrough. I was recommended Outer Wilds by my roommate, and I knew a couple things from some random YouTube videos. I'll mention outside influences on my playthrough as they come up. Also, I didn't think to take notes when I was playing the game, so I might forget some things in the voiceover. Sorry. I started my first cycle by roasting some marshmallows, then wandering around the town, flew the model rocket a bit, played with the satellite camera, the signal scope, and the scout launcher, and then jumped into and out of some ghost matter. Then I stepped on a geyser and learned that this game does have fall damage, and ended my first expedition. So I knew about the time loop supernova thing from a video I saw at some point, so I was a little surprised to have to actually restart and not just like respawn. So I picked up where I left off. So I went to the gravity cave and the museum, where I just somehow missed the quantum rock and the DLC section. I don't know. I came back for those later. I got the launch codes and then was uploaded by the statue, starting the main gameplay. So I stayed on Timber Hearth for a bit. I visited the Bramble Seed first, where I learned about, Dark Bramble's weird teleportation thing, and then went to Mining Site 2B, where I learned about the, Nomai ball things, and then also learned about the gravity transport things. More importantly, I learned the very first little bit about the Ash Twin project, and then I flew over to this weird looking Nomai structure, explored along the bridge a little bit, and then the sun exploded. Oh! I started this cycle by looking at the ship's log. To be honest, that's how I started a lot of the cycles. So you can just assume I started most cycles by looking at the ship's log. I'm not going to mention it from now on. So then I checked to see if I could fit into the Bramble Seed. I just fly in there. Ow, okay. I couldn't. Next, I visited Esker on the Atla Rock and explored around a bit there. I found the planet identifier thing, I think it's the eye locator, and then completely forgot about it until I was writing the script. Then I visited the Ember Twin and was hit by the supernova right outside the high energy lab. I headed to the Interloper, where I found the Nomai shuttle, but I lost my ship. I tried to make it to this thing I saw in space, but then I ran out of oxygen and died. Asphyxiating alone in the middle of space was not going to stop me, so I headed back to the Interloper. This time though, I stopped at that thing that I saw and learned it was the White Hole Station, and that falling into the black hole would probably take me here. I also learned that the station can be used to teleport back, but I didn't test it yet. Instead, I grabbed the Ember Twin projection stone and flew it all the way back to Mining Site 2B to use a projection pool there, because I thought that was the only space that had a projection pool and a scroll wall, so that was wrong. So I flew back to the Ember Twin and found Escape Pod 2 and the Quantum Moon Locator, and then the supernova. I don't think I can outrun it, can I? No. The next day, IRL, I started by flying to Brittle Hollow, and I found Escape Pod number 1. Oh, I probably should have read that. Oops. I also learned about the black hole there. Oh, shoot. Okay, there's a black hole in there. And met Ryback. I explored the Hanging City a bit and looked at the gravity cannon, but I did not call the shuttle back. Then I fell into the black hole, which spit me out at the white hole. There, I found this little building with a tree, but I ran out of fuel and then lost the tree while I was looking for the White Hole Station, and then ran out of oxygen. I wrote a sad face in the script. How am I supposed to make the sad face? I flew back to Brittle Hollow. Inside Brittle Hollow, I found the vessel murals, the escape pod and vessel murals, and explored more of the city. This time, when I fell into the black hole, I made it to the White Hole Station, and then teleported back. Then I got distracted by one of Hollow Lantern, the little, space rocks that fly out of Hollow's lantern. Is that the Phantom Moon? Or is that just, a little bit of rock or something? Oh, that's... Oh boy, here I go, back into the black hole. Fell into the black hole again, had to do the black hole white hole teleport thing. Knowing the cycle was almost over, I flew my ship into the black hole to watch the supernova from the white hole, and it still killed me. Yeah, they tell you don't look straight into the sun, but I don't really think it matters anymore. I flew back to Brittle Hollow and tried to get into the Southern Observatory, or the Quantum Tower. Instead, I fell into the black hole and ran out of oxygen. I checked out this red dot that I saw on the map, which turns out to be the Deep Space Satellite, which is part of the DLC, but I didn't know that at the time. Then I went back to Brittle Hollow. This time I recalled the shuttle with the gravity cannon and realized it was from the Quantum Moon and not the one from the Interloper. Then I just waited out the rest of the cycle with Ryback. This time I went back to the escape pod on the Ember Twin and discovered the Sunless City through that escape hatch. I found the easier way in, but not much else because the sand had risen a little bit too much. Seeing as there's no sand on the Ash Twin, I went over and found the teleport tower to Timberhearth. I returned to the Ash Twin and then messed around a bit for the supernova. I went back to the Sunless City while there was less sand and found my way to the Anglerfish Skull, but I ran out of fuel and was very low on oxygen, so I just got crushed by sand. Going back to the Sunless City, I found my way to the High Energy Lab and messed around with the time trickery there. I went back to the nearby gravity cannon and recalled the shuttle on the Interloper, learning about that fissure in the ice. Then I launched the shuttle and then fell out and died. I went back to the Ember Twin gravity cannon and accidentally shot myself into the sun. Oh, gravity cannon is still activated. So yeah, gravity cannon 2, me 0. Going back to the Sunless City to fill out the logbook, I found the area above the Anglerfish, which didn't finish the entry, but I just headed over to the Ash Twin. Found the teleporter to the sun station there, and then the sun consumed the sun station. First bit of outside help. I knew from my roommate that there was an achievement for flying to the sun station. For some reason, I decided I was going to try to get it. I crashed into the Ash Twin hard enough to knock the cockpit off the rest of my ship, and then tried to teleport to the station, and then died in the cactuses. I flew into the sun. I hit the Ash Twin, tried to repair in space, and then the ship fell into the sun. I tried for most of the cycle, but then gave up. I think the sun station had fallen to the sun already. I found the Brittle Hollow teleport on the Ash Twin, and then fell into the black hole again, and then was consumed by the supernova. Having given up on flying, I managed to use the teleporter to reach the sun station. Learned everything I could, and then left before it was consumed. I used the Brittle Hollow teleporter again next, and then died from running into an icicle. I went back to the Interloper, but just missed the opening of the fissure. Instead, I explored more of Timberhearth, finding the radio station, and the Quantum Grove. This might have also been where I went back for the Museum Quantum Rock, but I could be wrong about that. Next, I went to Giant's Deep, as I hadn't been there yet, where I found the little island with the bramble seed thing, and then died when I walked into some ghost matter. I rushed to the Interloper to make sure I was there when the ice fissure opened. I jumped out of the ship so I wouldn't miss that window, and then I died because I didn't put my spacesuit on. I made it to the Interloper. I accidentally fell down the one tunnel that doesn't have ghost matter somehow, and then fell into the giant pit of ghost matter. So I stopped playing for the day. Heading back to the Interloper, I made it inside again, actually avoided the ghost matter as intended, and then learned some about the end of the Nomai. Leaving the comment, I realized my ship had wandered off without me, and I think fell into the sun. I just barely made it to the White Hole Station, and then teleported back to Brittle Hollow. Yay! I looked around a bit, and then fell back into the black hole, and hung out until the supernova. The log told me there's some more to the Hanging City and the Interloper, but I really didn't care right then, so I headed back to Brittle Hollow. I found the Temple of the Eye, and then the controls for raising and lowering the Black Hole Forge. I lowered, or maybe raised, the forge? I don't know, the directions are weird here. And then made my way there through a series of teleports. Inside, I learned about the center of gravity and 5-degree rules for teleportation, which didn't seem at all useful to me at the time. Then I hung out by the statue to see if it would do anything at the end of the cycle. It did not. I saw the Quantum Moon and tried to land on it. So far, the only info on the moon I had was that it moved when the Nomai looked away, and that it only accepts visitors at the South Pole. So I thought I had to, guess where the South Pole was, and then flew at it, and then it disappeared when I entered the cloudy atmosphere. So I flew to the Ember Twin and met Chert there. Nearby Chert are some caves that the Nomai explored, where I was jump scared by the Quantum Cave Shard. So there is... It's right behind me. I did some testing and found that the shard would not teleport if I was standing on it, or if I was looking at a picture of it. There are another 2 caves nearby with some more information about the shard, but I was only able to visit one as the sand had covered the other. So then I hung out on the Ash Twin until all the sand was gone to see if there was anything interesting. There wasn't, and then the sun exploded. I decided to go back to Giant's Deep, but specifically to look at the thing in the orbit. I learned all about this orbital gravity cannon, and that the probe tracking module was in the quantum realm. The heck? This might be Dark Bramble. That looks like it would be like a Dark Bramble route thing. My first thought was Dark Bramble, and then I looked at the ship log where it was just like, yeah, it's in Giant's Deep. It didn't actually say that. The ship's log was like, yeah, it's underwater. And yeah, that's Giant's Deep. So I checked out Giant's Deep, and I saw the electric core, but it was surrounded by this impassable turbulence. Realizing I had no easy way in, I found Gabbro, and then just tried crashing my ship into the water really, really hard to see if it would get me through the turbulence, which didn't. So I explored a bit more, finding Statue Island and the island where the Nomai built the orbital gravity cannon. I tried to enter the statue workshop with my ship from space, which didn't work, but then I got distracted by the quantum moon, which I also didn't land on. Then I landed at the Giant's Deep quantum tower. There, I was taught that I can look at pictures of quantum things to make them stay, which I had already learned back at the other cave. I found my way into the statue workshop. Underwater is how you're supposed to do it, not in space. And then frantically tried to read everything before the supernova took me. Tornado shelters don't help against supernova. With the knowledge of pictures, I figured out how I can go to the quantum moon. There, I found the quantum shrine, which told me there were 2 more rules I needed to learn. Quantum entanglement and the 6th location. Based on the pictures on the wall, I guess the 6th location was the eye, and the lakebed cave held the answer to the other rule. I went back to Giant's Deep, as the ship log says there was more to the construction yard. I found a projection stone that showed a place in Brittle Hollow with some mini storms.
Is it just like the tornadoes push you down instead of up or something? Yeah, that definitely looks like a downwards tornado right there.
But I didn't see any. I rewatched my recording while I was writing the script. I missed one, like right there. I might just be really bad at identifying clockwise and counterclockwise spin. In any case, I decided it was time to check out Dark Bramble. I'd avoided it so far because my roommate had mentioned the DLC had scary parts, and Dark Bramble seemed scary. So I was like, that's gotta be DLC. But I was like, what the heck, there's nothing else to explore. I'm gonna go there. I got eaten by an anglerfish. I headed to the lakebed cave first, while there was no sand in it. There I learned the rule of quantum entanglement. Quantum things will move if the lights are turned off. That was everything there, so I flew to Brittle Hollow to check out the Tower of Quantum Knowledge. I stopped by Hollow's Lantern, but didn't see anything important. I couldn't get into the tower though, so I headed to Dark Bramble by way of the black hole. I tried to make it to this orange glow, and then got eaten at the second Bramble Gate. I'm calling them Bramble Gates. I don't know if that's what they're actually called, but that's what I think of them as. I checked out Brittle Hollow again, and then went to Dark Bramble. I don't think I mentioned this. I knew they were blind, and I was pretty sure they hunted by sound, but I was like, I'm gonna shoot the scout launcher, and then maybe they'll follow the scout. And instead, I shot the scout launcher, and then they were like, oh, you shot the scout launcher. That's a sound, and then ate me. I headed back to the Quantum Moon, armed with what I thought were all of the rules. I couldn't get the moon to teleport, though, and in trying to launch my ship into space to remove the ship light, I lost the moon. So I headed back to Brittle Hollow. I made it to the Southern Observatory, and I learned I was right about the downward storms. So I flew straight to Giant's Deep, and then got myself under the surface, and then ran to the electric core and had my ship reactor explode. I tried to just like go through the core without the ship, you know, just for science, and then died. I headed back to the core of Giant's Deep, looked around a bit, and then realized I couldn't get in, so I gave up and went back to Dark Bramble. Finally made it all the way to the orange dot, and realized I had no clue what it was. I tried to use my signal scope, but it wasn't picking anything up, so I flew around a bit and then died in the supernova. I went back to the Quantum Moon, and this time I closed the door of the Quantum Shrine, which lets me teleport to the 6th location. A big purple wall. I decided to leave, but I had lost my ship because the moon left it behind. So I tried to take the Nomai shuttle and just crashed it into Hollow's Lantern. I think that's score 3 for the gravity cannon. The Sunless City was one of the few logbook entries I still had to finish, so I flew there and found the Eye Shrine, which was the last new thing there, which didn't really give me any new information. Feeling discouraged, I headed to Brittle Hollow to see the Temple of Quantum stuff, which I'm sure I'm not going to get any new information from. I read the stuff on the outside, and then waited until it fell into the black hole to enter the inside. There, I learned the true secret of the 6th location. You have to be on the north pole of the planet to reach it. Then I crashed into a wall until I died to end the loop. At this point, I thought I was almost done with the game. I was sure I was just going to go to the 6th location, and then that would be it. That would be done. Instead, when I went to the Quantum Moon, I was met by another impassable wall on my way north. In trying to go over the wall, I breached the atmosphere, and the moon disappeared. I somehow managed to get it back, and then broke all of my bones on re-entry. I don't always mention it, but I broke all of my bones quite a few times while playing this game. When I landed, I thought of something. Every time I've been on the moon, it has matched the planet it was near. So I used Quantum Shrine, moved the moon around until I found a configuration that let me reach the North Pole, and then headed to the 6th location. Instead of a way to reach the eye, I found the kind of living Nomai.
Selenum.
I had most of a conversation with them before the loop reset. There were like 2 more combinations of rocks that I needed to check, so I flew back to the moon to confirm. I finished the conversation with
Selenum.
and then used the shuttle to return to Brittle Hollow. Then I sent the food into Hollow's Lantern again. It's like score 4 for the gravity cannons. At this point, I wasn't sure where to go, so I tried finishing off the spots in the log that I missed. There was a little more to explore in the lakebed cave, so I found the bit of text that I missed, and then I headed back to the interloper for those 2 pages of text that I missed the first time somehow, and then I lost my ship again, so I just flew into some ghost matter. I finally fully decided that Dark Bramble was not the DLC, and I headed back there. This time, I remembered to use the signal scope. I woke up an anglerfish, but managed to hide from it in this crevice. After somehow escaping the fish and leaving my ship behind, I found Feldspar's camp. They told me the secret to reaching the center of Giant's Deep was along this route, but I completely misinterpreted their instructions, so I kind of just ignored what they were saying. I thought they were just showing me a quick way out of Dark Bramble. Then I tried looking for the escape pod distress beacon, but I ran into a route and died. I went back to Dark Bramble and followed the distress beacon to escape pod 3. From there, I found the Nomai grave, and then followed a scout towards the vessel, and then I got eaten again. I did all that again, this time making it to the vessel. The only intact room was the control area, which has a broken warp core, a weird triangle-y thing, and then a bunch of messages from other Nomai vessels. I messed around with the triangle and the warp core, and then the sun exploded. The ship log, though, just said the triangle thing was an input. That helped. The log said that there was more with Feldspar, so I went back and actually paid more attention to the conversation and realized what they were saying about Giant's Deep. I followed the route and found that the jellyfish are insulating and hollow. Then I fed myself to an angler to reset the cycle. With the jellyfish knowledge, I went back to Giant's Deep and promptly electrocuted my ship on the jellyfish. When I didn't use the ship, I managed to find the probe tracking module. Inside, the projection showed me the coordinates to the eye of the universe, which I didn't know how to read. I got back to the ship and looked at the log and tried to figure out what I was missing. The only question mark left on my log was the Ash Twin project, so I headed back to that planet, and then I messed up the autopilot and crashed into the sun. I flew to the Ash Twin successfully this time to check where all of the towers teleporting me. Standing in a random tower, genuinely, this was just the first tower that I looked at, I realized
The vessel. It has a input that's 3 symbols. I just got 3 symbols.
so I just need to get a warp core to the vessel, and there's a warp core in the Ash Twin. So then all I needed was a way to get in, or maybe I can get a warp core in the energy lab. So I flew around the Ash Twin a bit before heading to the energy lab, which was covered in sand, and then the sun exploded. So I thought I had it. I had to go to the high energy lab, get the warp core, and then take the vessel to the eye, but I had to stop recording for the day. Now, I got some unintentional outside help. Between the 2 recordings, 3 days passed. In that time, I had a conversation with my roommate about Outer Wilds. I mentioned having only the Ash Twin project left to fill out, and he said something along the lines of, oh, so you just have to get into the Ash Twin. So I knew that the energy lab was not the way to go. He also mentioned that the DLC content is in the museum, so I went over there and glanced at it, but didn't actually read. Now, to this point, I had thought there was no way into the Ash Twin. Every single time the Nomad mentioned it, they say there's no physical way to get in, and I just thought that was no way at all. So my initial idea was going to be somehow hijack the White Hole station and teleport to the center of the Ash Twin. I thought that's what all the angle adjustment stuff was about. And then I looked at the ship log and saw those pictures of the Ash Twin towers, and then realized there is a Ash Twin tower on the Ash Twin. I rested at Chert's camp for a bit, and then checked out the tower, and then I got sucked up into the sand. The exact same way I did the cycle before, but it had been a couple of days, so give me a break. At this point, I remembered that I had teleported with the unbroken tower at some point, and that one goes to the Ember Twin. So that would mean the broken tower is the Ash Twin one. I found this conveniently placed alcove to protect me from the sand, and teleported into the Ash Twin. I looked around a bit, but didn't take out the warp core as there wasn't really enough time left. Then I fell into the core and ended the cycle. With everything I needed to beat the game, I first talked to Gabbro about meditation. Wait, no. I waited for the sand to clear from the Ash Twin while working on the achievement to land the model rocket on the Atla Rock. I also discovered this subterranean cave network on Timberhearth. And then I got squished by an elevator. This was it. Going to beat the game now. I landed on the Ash Twin. I teleported inside. I grabbed the warp core. I flew to Dark Bramble. I found Escape Pod 3. And I crashed my ship into a branch, causing a reactor failure and blowing myself. This was it. Going to beat the game now. I landed on the Ash Twin. I teleported inside. I grabbed the warp core. I flew to Dark Bramble. I found Escape Pod 3. I made it to the vessel without blowing up. I input the eye coordinates. And I warped to the eye. And then I was like, what? How do I get down there? And then fiddled around a bit and found the teleporting thing. And then I walked to the south pole of the eye and stepped off. The actual ending segment is super linear, so I'm just gonna assume you know what happens already, right? You've played this game. I did learn that shooting a scout on the eye caused it to show up in the final cutscene though, so that's kind of cool. But now that brings us to my thoughts. Man, this game is fun. I haven't played a long story-based game in a while. I played a short one about a month ago, and then before that it was maybe the Artificer campaign in Rain World, and that was like 5 months ago. Anyway, this sure was a great one to come back to. It's also one of only 2 roguelikes, if you even want to call it a roguelike, that I've played with a comprehensive story, the other being Hades. I really like the discovery aspect of the game, you know, following the little arrows on the ship log to the next place. It did get a little annoying when there are multiple spots in the log that had the same information, and then I thought it was new information, and then I wasted a bunch of time trying to find it, and then it was information I already had. I understand why it's there, though. So players who went to areas in different order than I did can get the same information. Another small annoyance is the secret of the 6th location. I don't really like that it's just handed to you. You just read it. A lot of the other information is things you have to piece together, which I find a lot more entertaining than just like, you have to go north. It is still a bit of a puzzle that you have to figure out how to get north, but the actual just like, here's the secret, wasn't a fan of that. The area order that I mentioned, that's something I also have thoughts about. When I talked with my roommate over the weekend, he talked about some of our friends who he has also got to play Outer Wilds. They each had different approaches to exploration. One went straight to the Interloper, skipping most of Timberhearth and the Atla Rock. Another went to the Twins and had the supernova happen during nighttime, and so they thought it was one of the planets exploding. It's really cool to see how different playstyles can affect the way the information is discovered. Of course, I have to mention my thoughts on the ending. I'll end up watching a video explaining it, I'm sure, but here are my initial thoughts. When you jump off the eye, you're taken to a place outside of the regular universes. The quantum space changes to fit you and the things you recognize, the same way the moon does. The universe then dies. That's what all the solar system galaxy explodey things are. That's also the universe dying. I think I got that information from my roommate. I don't think the other explorers are actually there. I think they are reflections of the information you have learned. I haven't tested, but I bet if you go there on a save file where you haven't met the other explorers, I bet they don't show up. I'm not sure though. You gather them because you're pulling, it is the physical representation of you gathering all of your information into one spot. You're pulling all your information together. And then once you're ready, you create a new universe, which has new life. I had a ton of fun exploring and uncovering the secrets of this game, and I will probably be starting the DLC when I finish making this video. I might also do some achievement hunting, depending on how hard they all are. If those are things you'd be interested in seeing a video about, let me know in the comments. I do my best to read all of them. Anyways, you know the drill. Like if you liked, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you next time.